Ready.
Let's talk fishing.
You.
We are going to talk about some ice fishing. We got to talk about some ice fishing. It is ice fishing season. So
It is.
I thought of this because over the holidays, one of my favorite movies is Grumpy Old Men.
Oh, yeah.
It's a holiday movie for me, though. I totally leave it at Christmas. Let's just address that for a second. And the topic here that we're actually going to get into is ice fishing rod, reel, line. We're going to kind of talk about that setup. And we'll get into how Grumpy Old Men. But, Tim, that's a Christmas movie to me. How do you feel about Grumpy Old Men?
I don't know if I would say that it's like a Christmas movie. And honestly, I know I saw bits and pieces of it when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I didn't watch it until I don't know, maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, sure.
So it was never like a Christmas holiday movie, but when I watch it, I'm just like, oh damn, that looks dope. Where they're just they just have a city. It's like their ice, their where they live. It's just there's a city of fishermen and all the ice houses, they're all next to each other, and it's just people just coming out of the ice houses just being like, yeah, what you got any luck, well, and they're all old, so that's why I'm doing that with what do you got? Yeah, so
and there's just someone that's selling stuff, a convenient, they just popped up a convenience store in the back of the truck.
Yeah
Oh good.
Yeah, it's a dope setup. They make it look so glamorous, oh, here's just your another here's just the setup when it hits winter,
right?
Which this is kind of off topic, but I saw the other day, I was driving past it's a river, but it's a slow moving part of the river that freezes pretty good, and right behind this person's house that lived on the river, they have a big space cleared off with 2 hockey nets, and then just outside of their hockey rink they have their 2 the side by side pop up, Eskimo pop up.
Oh, nice.
So it's just a big ice house, and it's just all set up there, and I'm sure it's just theirs. And I was like, how dope is that?
No kidding.
You're just after school, I'm gonna go ice skate a little bit, maybe set up a tip up right here, and then maybe I'll hop into the ice house with my skates on and fish for a little bit, and if they're not biting, I'll go
my skates
I'll go play some hockey or whatever. And it's
right,
dude, that just looks so dope to have a setup like that. And that's kind of what it reminds me of, is just this different world, when it gets icy and you can set up this place that exists in some realms of where there's a bunch of friends that have the ice houses and stuff so they can set it up, but I've never seen how they have it set up where it's just a fucking city. And I was just like, that looks so cool. If that exists someplace, I would love to be part of it, where you just go out and I don't think it used
to on Waconia. And it used to as early as long ago, as most recent as the early 2000s, I know, because my cousin, who, funny enough, used to live where I live now, then moved closer to Waconia, and I started talking to him, and he was like, yeah, dude, we go to the ice house. And I'm like, what? You're now those people, aren't you? And he's like, yeah.
Right.
You grew up here. It's out there. And I was like, oh my God, dude, that is so fucking sick.
And I don't know if the times were different back then, or certain areas just have more trustworthy people. But now it seems to be that it's not as popular to do that, because there's so many shitheads that'll break into your place and steal your shit.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I get what you're saying there,
because it's not like a house, it's not on a property. I don't know if there's different rules or whatever, but there's shitheads that'll go out in the middle of the night and just break into your ice house and steal your shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can just insure it though.
Yeah,
like a car, right? Yeah. If you leave your car parked in a parking lot overnight, it's still insured for break-ins.
Right. Yeah,
So I'm
but I
sure
don't know
there's
how any of that stuff works. I don't know if
me
there's
neither.
like
I'm not
a
an insurance
if you still got to
person.
pay a deductible. I'm sure there's still a bunch of fucking
Right.
hoops you got to jump through by the time everything clears. It's summertime, and you're like, oh great, I got a new flasher.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good point. But it wasn't the community stuff that made me think about this topic, because I was talking about
Mm.
rods and reels and everything like that. And we've talked
Yeah.
about it a few times. In fact, if you go over to episode 57, not that long ago, we talked about spinning reels and we got into the ice fishing spinning reels and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I'm just like, so the ice fishing times that we're talking about are from the 90s. This Grumpy Old Men is from the 90s, the mid 90s,
Yeah.
and mid early 90s actually. No, mid late. Anyways, doesn't point. And I have a fishing rod right now, ice fishing rod right now that I bought from, I want to say Fleet Farm. And it was less than 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it's a piece of shit. And I'm not going to say, I'll get into that in a second. We'll get into that in just a second. But it made me think, like, the Green Hornet on Grumpy Old Men is an old school fishing rod. That thing it doesn't have a reel.
Right. Yes. You can buy
So
those
I was
still.
like, okay, shit has changed crazy. You've said it before. 13 seems like it has changed the game.
Yeah, like I think they came out and like really started leaning into like the inline, which I don't
Mm-hmm.
think was a big deal before that. And
Mm-hmm.
then now they went from like 13 Fishing has like their Black Betty or whatever. And I actually think I'm pretty sure. So if anybody's watching right now, I'm
Oh, yeah.
pretty sure that this is like what 13 Fishing started at. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
it's called like number 8 tackle.
Okay.
And dude, this is like the exact same reel, or they bought it out. I don't know. This is like the exact same reel as like the cheaper 13 Fishing inline reel that they have now.
Oh,
And I don't know if I just bought it like right before they really started
right.
or what.
How old do you think that is then? Like that purchase of yours is like,
That reel, that was like the first ice reel I ever bought
mm-hmm.
for myself. So I don't know exactly. Because I
Okay.
bought
Like
that.
more than 10 years ago? Because you got to
No.
think 10 years ago would be 2013.
Yeah. I don't know then. Maybe it was like a Fluger deal. Like Fluger
Mm-hmm.
and Shakespeare are the same company.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they had their like lesser known stuff under this
Sure.
other name,
Okay.
where they're like, oh,
Yeah.
we're 13 and this is number 8, and like that'll be our like slightly lower quality stuff. Or
Sure.
I don't really know, but it seems to be like the exact same reel that they have now, but it's called
Interesting.
13 Fishing. And
Huh.
this number 8, like I don't think it exists anymore.
Right.
So that's why I'm
Okay.
kind of a little bit confused on that stuff.
Yeah. It sounds confusing.
But yeah, so I think 13 did start. They're not the first to do an inline reel, but they
No.
may be the first to kind of incorporate stuff like a bait cast reel, where it's got like a magnetic, like a
It's
like
got
I forget the term.
it's a free fall is what they kind of call it. Like the free
Right.
fall trigger. Is that what you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, because I have
okay. So
all my
hold on.
stuff
Before
here.
we
So
jump into that quick,
yeah,
before you bring that one up, because I saw you had it, let's kind of lay out, there's 3, maybe 4 big ones out there, because that old school, like, it's a rod with a handle, 2 sticks, and some line wrapped around it.
yeah,
That's what the Green Hornet is from Grumpy Old Men. It's
right.
just like a duck that has some line wrapped around underneath it, right?
Yep.
And that's what I knew as a fishing rod from being a kid. I had never seen a reel on a
Sure.
fishing rod, and when I started seeing reels, I was like, "Wait, what the fuck is going on?" So there's like okay, so there's like 3 or 4 main ones, right? And
Yeah.
you correct me as I'm wrong, but if I'm wrong, but there's like basically you shrink down a summer spinner rod setup, right?
Yeah, yep,
Just
exactly.
take it and shrink it down. You got a rod, you got a spinner reel, shrink it down. There you
Yep.
go. There's one kind.
Yep.
Then you got the rod, which you already showed with us inline, which is the best way I can describe it. It's like a mini fishing rod, you know, just like a normal fishing rod. It's like a mini fishing rod, and then the reel
Yeah.
on it is almost like they turned a they turned the line bail into they just put a reel on it. They just put a reel on the line bail and hung it underneath
Yeah,
a fishing rod.
it's like a winch.
That's a better way of putting it.
It's like yeah, it's like you're just like it's like a hand winch. You're just cranking it in.
Yeah. And so I have a shitty version of that. Like I would say like the OG version of that where
Okay.
there's no bearings, it's just like you know how when you set up a new spinner or a new bait
Yeah.
caster and you put a pencil in between
Yeah.
the line,
Yeah.
dude, that's like the kind of inline ice
Yeah.
fishing rod that I have. Like that shit
Yeah.
is jank.
And that's exactly what I was getting at when I was saying like they weren't the first to do it because that technology has been around
Yeah,
for a
for sure.
while. But I
And
think
I bought that back in the day when I bought it. I mean, again, less than 10 years ago, but I bought that because I was just like, "Oh, look, cool. It has an actual reel on it and it's
yeah.
not a mini fishing rod because I don't
Yeah.
understand the mini fishing rods yet, you know, like so
Sure.
I knew that I could still apply my 90s knowledge with my, you know, recently learned actual summer fishing stuff and I can go, I got this. I can
Right.
use this rod.
Yep.
But it doesn't open bail. It doesn't I have to reel it out and I have to reel it in because it's literally just feeding off
Oh
of the
yeah.
winch.
Right,
Like
right.
that's
Yep.
how jank that thing is. And
Yep.
so I only bring that up to say like there's obviously a big transition that's happened there, but that is still one of the main that sort of inline with the fishing rod.
Right.
And then you got your tip up and then your old school, which I've already talked about. And those are basically hand lines.
Yeah,
Right.
dude. Yeah. I mean it's like the same thing as the reel you were describing pretty much, except for instead of cranking it onto a thing, you're just kind of like winding it almost like it's an electrical cord. You're just like tink, 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 tink,
An
tink.
extension cord, dude,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
an
yeah,
extension
yeah.
cord on your arm.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, dude. Oh, that's so funny. So you were about to bring up another setup of yours,
Yeah.
right? You were about
Yeah,
to
because
show
I
it
was
again.
just saying like I
So, yeah.
think 13 fishing is one of the first ones to make it more like it's like you said, the free spool, like it's a bait caster. So
Okay.
what you were describing is like the same thing. If this was just a crank and like this, you had to control both ways. But what I was getting at was like how a bait caster, this knob on the front puts tension on there, like
Mm.
uh just oh, what's the word? Like just like how you would tighten like a screw or whatever. Like it's just putting tension on this by tightening this. And
Oh,
it's
so
not
it's just like not a break, but in a way it's kind of a break,
yeah,
right?
no,
Like
is
where
it
you
yeah,
just say
it's
like you screw it righty tighty and it puts tension on the inline uh spinner itself and
yeah,
it won't spin as fast, right?
right.
Lefty loosey and that thing starts to free spool a little bit
Yeah,
more.
exactly. Well, so there's two different so I'm saying that because there's also like two different types. Like that's exactly what it does, but this is just like a screw where you're putting tension on it just by tightening this up, it's putting tension on the bail.
Yeah.
But if you flip it over on this side, this is also a little tensioner, and this one
Ooh.
is like a magnet. So that's like
What?
that's like when you open up the bail, like the free fall. Like there's a trigger here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If I flip it like this, you can see it better. But there's a
Yeah.
trigger here. You pull that trigger, it releases it, and it just lets it fall.
And it just lets
So
it, yeah.
yeah, so you kind of want
Because the
to,
line just bzzz,
yeah,
you put
yeah,
enough weight on it and
yeah,
it just falls right out of there. It's like a free,
yeah,
I think I read that it's a free fall trigger essentially is like is kind of the name
exactly.
that they have.
Yeah, this one's a free fall trigger where like you pull the trigger and you're letting it fall, and as soon as it gets to where you want, you just let your finger off and it stops it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
sick, dude. It just
yeah,
releases line and lets the weight of whatever you have put on there for weight just take it away.
yep, yeah. It's dope.
And go back to the old school, like I don't know how we were doing this in the 90s and shit. You just had to keep unwinding it and know that like this is a foot, this is a foot, this is a foot.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because the knobs on the old school were 12 inches apart, you know?
right.
And
Yep.
and that was one of the things that I wrote down is like, so for anybody who's, if you're listening to this outside of the ice fishing area, is just like, I mean, you don't cast, you're just dropping.
Yeah, you're just
Like,
dropping. You're just letting
drill
it
a hole,
fall.
let it
Yeah,
go. So you have to think about that when you're getting a setup, because that's the whole point of this is like, I hope that we say enough stuff to where like somebody who's curious in ice fishing or comes up here, you know, who's not an ice fisherman can get the right thing. Because think
right,
about if someone comes up from Alabama and never ice fished before and they're like, cool, give me that spinning rod.
right.
Yeah, you don't operate it like you
Yeah,
think you do. Like it's a
no,
whole different operation.
yeah,
Not
and
whole different operation, but there's a different way of handling that thing.
right.
It's
Yeah,
just a hole. Like I
yeah,
don't know what else to say.
yeah, and I mean, it's pretty much the same thing with the spinning. You know, you can go out there and just grab it, but the thing is that like this is the longest rod I have, and this is where it starts, and this is where it ends.
And it almost fits in your like for
Yeah,
anybody who's just listening on audio, that route is so short. I
yeah.
actually looked them up and like I did, you know, a decent amount of research. I only saw 24 to 36 inch. Like that was the range.
I think you
If
can. They have them into the 40s, depending on what you're going for, because
oh, okay.
they have bigger ones. Because there's some like where you're standing outside of your ice house. You know, like
Sure.
the
Yeah.
a big reason of the like different lengths and stuff is because like if you're in your ice house and you're sitting here jigging like this and you only have 6 foot high ceilings and then you go to like lift up to set the hook and it's long, you're like whopping
Right.
the ceiling and you're not getting any
Right. Right.
leverage. Not to mention like when you put that rod tip into the ceiling, all of a sudden you're giving it slack and you're losing fish, you know. So
Ah,
there's
yeah,
like
yeah.
reasons to having such short rods because you're in a confined space. Plus,
Right.
you're sitting close to a hole most of the time.
Yeah.
Like if you had a 6 foot spinning rod, you have to be sitting 6 foot away from the hole, and that's just kind of crazy. Because you only can land it in one spot too. You know, it's that
Oh,
fish
that's
is
a really
coming
good
through the
point, dude.
hole. You know, so you have to be
Mhm.
able to like lift up the rod and reach down into that hole, and it all needs. You need to be close to the hole at all
You're
times for the
working in a
most part.
really confined space in
Yes,
comparison to open
exactly.
water, which I'd
Yeah,
never put together, which again is why I wanted to bring this topic up is to like obviously you just taught me something. It just you don't think about it until somebody
yeah,
says it like that because
right.
I'm just processing it as like this is normal. And then you say it and it's like, "Oh yeah, of course, that's why you
Right.
do that."
It's like a lot of stuff. You don't think about anything until you go and do it. And then you go like, oh, I did not think of that part. You
Right,
know?
right. Yeah,
Yeah. It's just and that's why we're doing this, you know? Like if you're a
for sure.
beginner, we're we're trying to throw out a couple of the things that you maybe didn't think about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and get you ready. Like go out there and just like you don't even have to worry about making that mistake. You
Right.
already know. So you that one that you just had up, which is the perfect example of where I wanted to go next, is those high vis tips on them. Now, for anybody who isn't familiar with snow blindness,
Yeah.
who is not familiar with the north, uh if you're out there on a nice day,
Yeah.
everything is fucking white and flat and bright and shiny.
If
E
you yeah.
Even with a good set of shades on, man,
Yeah.
it's fucking nuts out there.
And
Everything
by
just becomes like 10 times exposure.
yeah, by nice day, you're talking about like sunshine because the sunshine is hitting, like if it's
Yeah,
clear skies and that sunshine is hitting the snow,
yeah,
that snow is not just white. That snow is little pieces of ice. So it's reflecting like crazy. It is
yeah.
so bright.
So bright.
Like one of the gnarliest things, like if you've never done it before, like if you've ever been in a place that you don't have snow and you've been in your house on a sunny day and then
Mhm.
you try to go outside and you're like, wow, it is bright out today. It's that times like 10. It is
Yeah.
insane. Like when you're in an ice house and it's like all zipped up and stuff and there's not
Yep.
much light in there,
Mhm.
and then you
Mhm.
walk out onto the snow, it is like, holy shit, dude. It is gnarly. It is like you have to almost experience it because you probably think that we're messing with you and stuff, but it's like driving too. Like if you're driving in a spot that doesn't have snow and ice,
Mhm.
like you can get away with no sunglasses with just a visor, even though it'd be nice to have sunglasses.
Mhm.
But if you don't have sunglasses on a sunny day when it has snowed and stuff and there's a little bit of snow on the road still,
Yeah.
good luck because that's the light is bouncing up off of the ground too. You can't use a visor to hide from it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it is blinding.
Yeah.
It
Actually,
sucks. You're driving like
with
this. You're like, this is
like, so being a snowboarder, uh you have to wear a lot of sunscreen in the mountains.
oh yeah.
Gators, which we have over at realaf.tv/story. Remember, real like fish and real. Um, it's not just for the cold. It's not for the cold. In fact, a lot of the time, because the temperature in the mountains is fairly hospitable in the grand scheme of things when you're actually being physical like that.
Sure.
You wear it to not get sunburned. I went into Montana one year
Hmm.
and we were filming snowboarding, and one of my really white friends got blisters, sunburns on the bottom side,
Dude.
like underneath his chin.
Right. Yeah. That's
Like,
gnarly.
yeah, dude. So like it's super, super bright. It was obviously different in the mountains because you're fucking 8,000 feet closer to the sun, but like
Right.
the point is still being made. Like I'm still making the point of like everything you just said. I'm just backing it up with a different example. And
Yeah,
like, so they
exactly.
have these high vis tips. That's a thing in the summertime too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean it's kind of the same thing. It's like you want to be able to see like when stuff is moving.
Yeah.
And this
But they
one,
don't look like that one that you have right now.
yeah, dude, this one's just a little bit like more gnarly.
Yeah. It's
And
got
this one like
lines in it. It's like a yellow, red, yellow, red. It's got a pattern to it that
yeah,
really.
and I'll take this off here. But like I know that you had said or like in the doc too, I saw that you were talking like about noodles.
Yeah. So you're okay. Yeah, let's make that transition. Like, okay, so there's this high vis tip on them, which is a thing in the summertime, but it just doesn't. There's different when it comes to the sun. Like, or, sorry, when it comes to the ice, there's different availabilities. I've never seen anything like that in the summer for a
Yeah.
summer rod. And
The
do they?
well, I mean, they exist, but it's not on most because it's not that big of a deal.
It's not a common thing
Yeah, because well, a
in the
lot of
summer.
times you're like watching the line. You
Sure.
know, you're not
Yeah, yeah,
watching your
yeah.
rod tip. You're watching where the line's going into the water. And
But this
on
high vis
this,
tip on ice fishing rods is
yeah, well, because a
totally a
lot
thing.
of times,
Totally
like
common.
especially on a thing like this. So this is the Jason Mitchell clam dead meat. So this is a
Okay.
dead stick. So a dead stick is like designed, like you can use it in many applications. It's a versatile rod, but because it has good backbone, like see the tip's super soft, but like look at that
Yeah.
when I pull on it, like I'm pulling pretty hard
Yeah.
and it's still
The
holding up
tip
in the back. But the
the tip
tip
has a
is
lot of
like,
action, but the rest kinda
yeah, the tip is springy as fuck. But
but the rest holds tight.
yeah, so a dead stick, you just sit there. Like this is designed to, like, you just put it in a rod holder or whatever.
Yep.
Or I have this thing on here because this is actually like set up to do like a tip up deal too.
Yeah, which we'll get into later for
Yeah.
sure.
So the high vis is so you can see that tip, and the noodle is like this tip is ridiculously flimsy. So that's why it's called a noodle.
Okay.
And
Yeah, because I had never even seen noodle before. Like you can
yeah,
just you go in to buy a fishing rod because that's how I did the most of my research. It was just like
yeah,
looking them up, right? And you
right.
go in to buy one and it just goes, okay, what length do you want? And you're like, okay, cool, that. And then like what is it called again? Flex? Action.
Action.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
action do you want? And noodles on there. And I'm like, what the fuck does
yeah,
noodle mean?
noodle. Yeah. So it's the tip is like ridiculously flimsy. Like I'm holding the hook right now.
Yeah,
You
you need
see
to
how
come
much
over to
that's moved?
YouTube and see this.
Yeah. I am barely, like I cannot, I'm moving my fingers that are holding the hook, but I
Yeah.
cannot feel the resistance of that rod.
That's crazy.
And that's the key. Like if you have some fickle panfish down there that are biting
Oh,
and
right,
they're
right.
barely nipping at it, they're not feeling that they're biting onto a line, and you're able to see
But you
that
can
they're
still
down there
see.
messing with it.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of the noodle. And that's why it's bright colored and it's super flimsy, because
Because when
you
that
can
thing's
just
just
watch it.
sitting there on the backdrop of a bright ass white ice surface,
Yes.
you want to see even that tiny little bit of movement. I assume because fish do that more in the winter. They're not as aggressive.
Right. I mean, it depends on which fish you're talking about. Like
Sure, sure,
noodles,
sure. But
noodles are generally for panfish because
yeah,
panfish,
yeah,
like
and that's what.
sunfish
Yeah,
and
I
stuff.
guess
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like you're out there
Yeah.
trying to get the good crappie, good sunny perch.
Right. Yep. But again, it's like a super versatile rod. Like right now, this is set up so I can fish a minnow, and I have
Nice.
there's like a swivel, and this bobber stop is just there. It would be farther up, like when I put a bobber on there, but
Right.
there's a swivel because I have it two different lines here. It's a thinner line
Oh,
towards the bottom, so just slightly.
damn.
It's like a thinner line, um, just because if something breaks, then it's easier to just swap it out and to not have to like retie everything. I'm
Oh,
just
okay. I
retying
got you.
like an extra little line to,
You got a little, yeah, little
yep.
switcheroo there,
So it's a
basically.
little bit weaker line from that swivel down. So
Oh, okay. I got you. I got you. So the bearings. Let's go to the reels quick. Before we
yeah,
jump before we go into the lines.
yeah,
Um, wait. I gotta ask one question though. Is
yeah.
noodle common in open water? Like, is noodle
No,
kind of an ice exclusive?
it's totally an ice thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So it's
I don't think there
yeah.
is like an open water noodle.
Okay. Good. Okay, so then let's get into some real stuff here with the bearings. I saw anywhere from 3 to 5. This 3+1 was new to me. So there's like a 3 plus
Oh,
1 or 4+1 or 5+1.
yeah,
Do you know what that is? I kind of looked
yeah.
into it, but I was like, I'd rather just ask him.
The plus one is the roller bearing. So
Yeah, which that's what I couldn't figure out. I'm like, what the fuck is the roller bearing? Which I had two different answers, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't feel
it's
satisfied with either one of these.
it's this thing.
the
right
thing that
here.
rolls the line on the spinnerbait?
Yeah.
There
There's
is
one
that I mean,
bearing
that's
in
what it is,
there.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's one bearing in
Not the
there that
spinnerbait.
actually makes it roll. Cuz I think the thing is on some of them it's just that like machine metal and it
Oh,
doesn't actually move.
right.
So when you have
Okay,
that +1, that thing is actually rolling.
gotcha.
So the bearings are in the
That
reel
makes sense.
itself, and then you have the one roller bearing.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And so to open water people, this seems like a small amount. These are
Yeah.
smaller things.
Well, you don't need it really because like I would say
Mhm.
that like making sure your drag works better is more important because
Nice.
when you're
Yeah.
reeling smooth, like having good bearings is a big part about having it reel smooth, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
And you're not casting anything out. You're letting it fall to the bottom and then you're just jigging it. You're only reeling when you fight the fish.
Yep.
So as long as it's not just like the worst reel in the world, you're normally pretty good. So it's
Yeah,
not.
well, like I even described my piece of shit one that I have at the beginning. It doesn't have any bearings. I know that it doesn't. I can tell by the way it reels. It has no bearings in that thing. It's old school. It's a reel,
Yeah.
but it has no bearings in it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you have one.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell you, it really feels like a piece of plastic on a cardboard tube. But
Oh no, yeah. No, what you're talking about, I bet you probably don't actually.
yeah,
It probably is
I
just
forgot to
plastic
grab
on
it. I mean, I
plastic.
would have
Yeah,
it
I know
here,
what
and
you're
you,
talking about. I
yeah.
forgot what reel you were talking about. Like I'm thinking of it being like a just a cheap spinning reel
Oh
like this, but then I
no, no,
remember like no, it's that cheap. Yeah,
that cheap inliner.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's probably nothing.
yeah,
There might be one, but yeah, probably not because
probably.
the way that it's set up, it doesn't really need much.
Yeah,
But if it
and that's
doesn't
the
have
point.
like a legit bearing in there, then it doesn't really matter much. It's just kind of like it's probably like you said, plastic on plastic.
Yeah. I really think it is. And that's why also like these are smaller reels. So like, somebody who might be coming to do the hard water stuff from as an open water, like, you know, well seasoned open water person might look at
Yeah,
that and be like, what the hell? But you just explained it, right? I mean, it's like it's not that big of a deal.
yeah, right. You just don't need like having to be able to adjust it to fall properly is nice, and to have that trigger to let it fall quicker is a big deal.
Sure.
And having a good drag and being able to reel smooth is very nice if you can afford it, but it's not necessary.
Sure.
And
Well, yeah, and even back to the old school stuff, and again, we'll get into tip ups too. Is this like you don't fuck it? We'll bring up tip ups right now too. Is
yeah,
the old school stuff and tip ups? A lot of it's just hand line, like it's old school hand fishing. That thing
yeah,
bites.
a tip
You
up
just gotta
is
you just gotta grab that fucking line and start pulling.
yeah, it's 100% hand fishing. I mean, some of them are a little bit different,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
those
I'm
those old
generalizing,
yeah,
no doubt.
right, those old school. Oops, shit, didn't mean to hit the mic there. But those old school ones are definitely um yeah, they just you go out and it's like a thicker black line, and then it'll go down to like or it should go down to like a swivel, and then you put on there like a fluorocarbon leader or
Mm,
whatever you got on there. I suppose if you're going for pike, then you could mm, maybe put like a steel heater on there or whatever.
sure.
But it's a pretty thick like black nylon line, and
Yeah,
then you just set the hook and then you fish it like this. You're literally just pulling it in by hand.
pulling it in through the ice, old school hand line.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
fucking wild.
it is. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, especially
Well, and
seeing
we'll
some
go
of the
further
pike
into
that
the
they pull in.
what's that?
Especially seeing some of the pike that they pull in,
Oh, right.
because
Yeah,
to think about how that's fighting you, you're just like, oh, he's going, and they gotta like let it go and stuff. Like
right,
that's 100% going by feel. There's no drag there saving you.
right.
Sometimes I get
Yep.
nervous too, where like I'm sure there's a video out there where somebody like wraps it up weird and it takes off running, and then it just like, you know, the
Oh.
line is just like strangling their hand. You're like,
Yep,
ow.
yep. Tearing through you.
Yeah. Hopefully the line
Oh,
breaks before you do any real damage.
right. Oh
But
god. So speaking of that, like the reeling, the bearings, all and the hand fishing and stuff like that, it's like so you have this ability to fish, or I should say, there are very standard reels or
yeah.
rods and reel rod setups
Yep.
that are hand fishing in ice fishing. It's a thing. It's
Yeah.
totally a thing.
For sure.
And then you look at these smaller rod and reels and or these smaller reels, right? And their
Yeah.
ratios just aren't that big. Like they're 3 to 1 or 5 to 1 or something like that. Um, I think you've told me like some of these bass fishers are working like an 8 to 1 or something like that. Like some of these
Right.
pros in the open
Yep.
water, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you want to explain ratio quick and then it's just piggyback, like just listen to what we just said and go,
Yeah.
the ratio doesn't matter as much
Right.
because of everything that we've just talked about. It's
Yeah.
coming up through one spot. You
Right.
can't cast.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. Well, like in the gear, yeah, exactly. When you're talking about gear ratio, a faster gear ratio, the only reason to have that is so you can work a bait properly or so you can pick up slack, depending on what kind
oh,
of bait you're using in fishing and stuff.
oh,
Because when
okay.
it comes to actually fighting a fish, the lower gear ratio, the better, because
Really?
you have more leverage on the fish.
Oh,
Like a crankbait, like a deep water crankbait, like an ideal reel for that is like um probably even under like a 6 to 1.
really?
Yeah, because like the
Wow.
fast ones are
Okay.
like 8 to 1 up to like I think some of them are even like 10 to 1, which
Jesus.
is like for every crank of your hand, the spool is cranking 10 times if that's like the fast one.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
slower ones are, down to like 6, like a 5.3 or whatever is like nice because it's giving you that leverage. So like a
Sure.
deep water crankbait is really putting a lot of crank or a lot of force on your reel. If you try to do that
Yeah.
with a faster reel, you
Uh-huh.
could, but it's hard, man. It's hard on the reel. It's hard on you. Like you have to use force. Like your arm's going to get fatigued because of how hard
Oh.
you're having to crank that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would have never thought of that, but it makes sense when
Yeah.
you say it because of the it's trying to swim down, right?
Right.
Like a deep water is going down, obviously applying a lot of pressure. It's almost like working against you in a way because it has
Right.
to swim down,
Yep.
there has to be resistance.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the gear ratio doesn't matter as much. Like there's no reason to have a faster gear ratio really because there's never ever really a time that you're trying to pick up a lot of slack
When
in
ice fishing.
ice fishing because your
Yeah.
your jig is at the bottom of your line. You're just kind of jigging it. When you feel the bite, you set the hook, you reel it in.
Right.
And for the most part, like if you're in 30 feet of water, your jig is 30 feet down. You're only
Mhm.
working with 30 feet of line. Once you set the hook, it might run and then you
Mhm.
got to fight it or whatever, but you're not
Mhm.
casting out 100 feet plus 30 feet down, you know?
Right.
So you're
Good
just,
point. Good
you're
point.
just pulling it straight up. So
Yeah.
having a lower gear ratio is fine because, and they're lethargic for the most part. Like they'll fight you,
Mhm.
but they're not going to be making like a run at the surface to jump like they would like a bass.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
Bass are kind of rare to catch in the winter anyways.
Mhm.
You just kind of don't see them in the same spots as some of the other fish. It happens, but they're not running to the
Sure.
surface to jump.
Yeah. No, I've
They're
actually
not
asked that before of
yeah,
like, why doesn't
yeah,
anybody ice fish for bass? And it's
yeah.
like
They're not
totally
the
different game.
right. They're not the brightest fish, but they understand what's going on in the time of year. They know that they can't run to the surface and throw the hook.
Right.
So they're not trying to jump or nothing. They're trying to swim down. So you're just, having that like sturdy lower gear ratio. helps.
It's
So, I
just
mean,
yeah.
really, it
It's
just
built
boils
I didn't know
down.
that. I mean, it really
Yeah,
boils down to these 3 to 5 this 3 to 5 that I saw, and I was like, "That's low." It's like,
yeah.
you're saying, "Yeah, that's built to fight fish."
Well, and the higher gear ratios actually like put more stress on the gears and stuff. So
Sure.
one of the biggest reasons that they haven't come out with even higher gear ratios is because it's really hard to make something that's a high gear ratio like that doesn't fail when you're trying to fight a fish because
Oh,
you're putting more torque on those gears when it's not a lower gear ratio.
right. Okay,
So
okay.
it's kind of a big deal to get one that can perform well and not fail.
Right. Yeah,
And so it's just completely pointless to give you a high gear ratio
when ice
because
fishing because
yeah,
it
there's no reason to make it go fast. There's
right.
no reason to risk failure. It's just like, no, you're fine. Just reel it straight up.
No, you're fine, it's good.
Yeah.
So, with with these lower gear ratios, it's all about basically just fighting the fish and, like,
Yeah.
set the hook, fight the fish. Like, that's kind of what ice fishing is, and that's why tip ups. And now we should explain what an actual tip up is. That's why tip ups are a thing. Like in Minnesota, you can have two lines. You can have a tip up, which amounts to what you already explained as a dead stick. Like a tip up, it just sits there.
Yeah, for
But
the
we'll
most part.
explain more of what it actually is.
Yeah.
For anybody who listening that doesn't know, of course, that's the whole point. And then you can have your own line that you're jigging because you've said that a bunch of times, right? Like you're bouncing off the bottom or
Right.
like you're jigging another line just sitting straight down. And
Yep.
so, though a tip up is a hand line, there's some stuff going on the above the water, right? Or I should say on top of the ice.
Yeah.
Those are crazy to me. They're more complicated than what I'm about to say, but the first version of a tip up and like the version of a tip up that I'm familiar with is like a plank. It's like a 2x4 laid
Yeah.
over the hole, and then you just put a tip up. You put a flag underneath a mousetrap, and the line is
Yeah.
attached to the mousetrap, and when a fish grabs the hook, it flicks the mousetrap. It sets the mousetrap off, and up goes the flag, and you start running towards the flag,
Yeah.
and then you hand fish that son of a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Cause so there's those like where a lot of those have kind of a cheap version of a reel, like what you were talking about, you have.
Oh,
So
okay.
you
We
can
do
kind
have
of
that on there.
yeah, you can kind of grab that, but most people don't really mess around with that because it's so small. And that's a 1-to-1 gear ratio, you know? It's you're
Oh, no, I
turning
didn't
it.
know that.
Well,
So,
I mean
yeah.
that's what it ends up being. Like that's what
Yeah.
yours is.
Oh, because
Because
there's no gears, there's
yeah.
no bearings, there's
Yeah.
nothing in between you and the reel.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
You're
duh.
turning that
That's
reel
what a
and
1-to-1 is.
it's
Oh.
just picking up that exact amount of line every time.
Right, yeah, makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1-to-1. Got it.
So
Mhm.
like you're yeah, it's such a small reel that it's like almost worse trying to fight a fish like that. So you
It'd be
so
more
you
work that way, just grab the fucking
yeah.
line.
Yeah. So you just run out and you grab the line, you're lifting it up and stuff. But that's what it is. It's like the line's just sitting there. And like you said, it pops that flag. And then on most of those kind of tip ups, the fish has grabbed the bait and is swimming away with it. And then you're just going out there trying to like set the hook before it ends up dropping it or swimming away too far.
Mm,
And
mhm.
then there's
Because
other
yeah,
types,
and then
which
this is
is
the evolution, right? Like, the thing you
yeah,
sort of alluded
this
to
is
already.
yeah,
Things are
this
changing, man.
yeah, I don't think I have it here, but this one here it has like a blue thing that sits on there and it just kind of sits like this. And when a fish bites, like the flag pops and then it actually just kind of like rotates up and then it'll actually kind of like pull and hook itself. I set the drag super, super light. so it can kind of like swim away with it still.
Mhm.
But it's essentially like on the line, and then I can just go and close the bail and actually fight the fish instead of
So you
hand
do
fighting it.
set so the thing that you're talking about, you have the spinning reel, like, you have this mini spinner set up.
Yeah.
Like, it's same as a big fishing rod in the summertime, but it's
Yeah.
small, shrunk down. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it. I know how this thing works, except for this part I don't actually know. So you set it up and you leave the bail open on the reel? Is that what you just said?
No, this one I actually like close it.
Oh, okay.
But I set the drag
But you said the drag
ridiculously light. Yeah.
crazy light. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So like I think I have it tightened up a little bit now. So but I mean like I'm barely pulling that and it's coming out. But I have it tightened a little bit now so I can like tighten this, and keep everything
So you can actually
together.
put the hook on the rod, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, can you explain to the people listening how so you have you have this spinning rod or spinning reel set up on a rod,
Yeah.
and it's just sitting there as if it were like in a rod holder, essentially. But
Yeah.
we have said that a tip up it's on a flag. It's like a flag's down, but when a fish hits, the flag pops up. So how does that
Yep.
work again? Did I miss that?
No, so the way this works, I don't have the thing with me, but it
Right.
essentially this metal piece, it essentially just kind of like there's another metal piece and it just kind of rests like that
Okay.
on like
So you
say
just
my fingers
suspend
are that
this.
metal. Yeah, like it's
You
just kind of
suspend this
yeah,
setup.
and then I can just come and grab it off. That's why this
But how
metal
does the
piece.
flag work? Like, how does the flag know when to go off on this one?
Oh, it's like it's really hard to explain, but basically like the line is kind of like attached to the flag. There's a piece,
Oh, okay.
and it's this part too where it kind of like rotates forward. It's the line, this part here. There's like a little tiny bump on here, and the line kind of goes around this. And when it tilts forward, like the line would just come off of this, and it triggers the flag to
And
go
it
up.
triggers the flag. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have no idea how to explain that to the audio
No,
listeners. I'm
and I
sorry.
have
That
no
is some
idea. I have no
huge thing.
idea to
You're gonna have
explain to
to look
people
into that.
even what. Yeah, I have no
Crazy.
idea to explain even people watching. But just know that it's an intricate little setup where the line is kind of like attached to the flag. It's not technically attached to the flag, but that's a good way of thinking about it. And then when the fish pulls it, it triggers the flag to come up, just like the other tip up does.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different setup.
Yeah,
And
but
then
in this
there's
case, you're able to use your spinning reel and rod
yeah,
setup
yep,
instead of this more of hand line sort of
yeah,
situation
yep.
that you're
And then
yeah, like I explained earlier is like this is what a traditional to me a tip up is.
yeah,
Let's let that flag pop and then go hand fish that thing.
yeah. There's another kind too, and that one I haven't got into because that one I've seen videos
Mm-hmm.
of fish like taking the whole rod and reel down with them into the hole, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'll just take my chances
You're
with
like,
this
yeah, I
kind.
don't want that one.
Because there's the kind where like the rod tip is almost bent over and there's like a tension on it, and if the fish comes and pulls the line, then the line like snaps free of how it's being held down. The
Oh,
flag goes up, but the rod tip that's pointed down
yeah,
also just like snaps up and sets
yeah.
the hook.
Oh,
So then
interesting.
so then it's like ready to fight. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have to be on that shit. And that's the ones where I've seen the dudes like
Right.
sprinting from like 20 yards away trying to get to it and like just barely getting there. And the rod just goes foop right down the hole. And you're just like, yeah, no, I don't want to.
I don't want that setup.
I don't want to risk that. I'd rather lose
Yeah,
the fish than lose my rod.
because a tip up is just like the fish swims up, takes the bait, and just kind of casually is like, "Cool, whatever." Starts swimming away. Well,
Yeah,
that sets the flag off because that took the line,
right.
and that doesn't mean that the hook is set in any way.
Right. No, it doesn't. That's what you're trying to hurry up is to get over there and set the hook before the fish realizes that this isn't just a minnow it has. Because you're
Gotcha.
always using live bait on that kind of a setup.
Okay.
Or at least I always am. I've never
Right.
heard of
Yeah.
anybody using artificials, but you're using live bait because then they come and they grab onto it and then they'll, swim away. And another thing with the tip up too, I would say if you're fishing a tip up, try to fish a tip up for fish you intend on keeping is my personal preference. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
if you catch a monster pike or whatever, and then, like release it, hopefully it didn't swallow the hook too bad and you're able to get it out. But I have seen, there's another guy that I saw that lives like further down south. I don't know exactly where,
Mm-hmm.
but he sets up tip ups in an area where he knows that he's fishing for bass. And I'm like, and it's like catch and release. And I'm like, dude, those bass are going to swallow those like live minnows.
Right.
And you're risking killing
It's
these
swallowing
fish.
the
Yeah.
whole, the hook, the line, the sinker, like right? Like taking that
Yeah.
whole lure, including the bait, and then you're hooking it back in the throat.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
once tried to fish catch and release with live bait. Like if
Mm.
I'm using live bait, I'm out
Mm-hmm.
there to put fish in the boat because I want to eat fish. So I guess
We're trying to keep it.
because when it's live bait, the fish know that it's live bait once it eats it. Like it knows that it's legit food. And
Right.
there's a good chance that it's going to swallow it. And
Gotcha.
then if
Yep.
it dies, whatever, I plan on killing it anyways.
Good point. Okay, so before we wrap, before we wrap up the fishing topic and get into the random take, we are gonna touch a little bit on lines because
Yeah.
I have questions, but
Mhm.
I also never thought about this before researching this topic and doing this topic is like, okay, there has to be something to the memory of a line.
Jesus. Sorry. Did you hear that?
I started to hear, but I didn't know because I was
That was
talking.
like my like throat and stomach made a noise that was not a burp. It just came from inside of
Just
me.
came-
That freaked me out. It was like I don't know what that was. That was the weirdest thing. I don't think I've ever had that happen before.
Internal burps. Yeah, they happen.
It was just like gas
Wow.
escaped without actually burping. It was just like what was that?
I've heard of that. I've had that happen.
Okay.
That's funny. I bet you
Sorry.
the mics picked up on it. I don't know if I was talking too loud for it
I
to pick
heard
up,
it
but
and I have headphones on. I don't know if I heard it through the headphones or through like but I was
it'll
just like
go published. It'll go.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so lines. Okay. So there's probably some memory stuff to the line because
Yeah.
uh is a spinning reel not smaller in diameter in the winter than it is in the summer? It is,
It
right?
is. It's smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there has to
because
be something going on
the
there.
spool is smaller for sure.
The
Yeah.
spool, yeah, for sure. So there
Yeah.
has to be something going on there. I didn't find out too much of that, but I was just like, there's got to be
Yeah.
some sort of technology going into that, because they just sort of market them
Yeah.
as special cold weather formula. So they have to
Yeah.
be taken into temperature, the smaller diameter of the reels. Like
Yeah.
there's legitimately
There's some science
different
because
lines.
yeah, because there's two big parts of it are one, they're trying to make it so it's like smooth so it doesn't ice up. Like a lot of them have coating on it, so it tries to make them
Oh,
not ice up. Like
right. Okay.
ice braid is a thing, and you don't
Oh.
want them to ice up. I I don't understand. I don't care. I don't. I've never purchased ice braid. I don't know why some people use ice braid. I could see maybe if you want like a really thin diameter line that's super heavy, like if you're ice fishing for like lake trout or something. But
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I've I've never seen the appeal, but I only fish for like panfish and walleye, so I don't.
Right.
I don't know. But I was gonna say like the whole um memory, I'm sure that has part to do with it. Um this line also, I was gonna say that I have um
On your dead stick there?
yeah, I was gonna say that I have that because I do have, it's not braid, but it's the nano fill, which is kind of
Yeah.
like a
Yep.
super line, which is kind of like a braided. So that's one of the reasons I have that on here, and that's why I have that uh the swivel
Yeah.
to the other line because I wanted it clear and translucent, so it's
Oh.
fluorocarbon on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
But I was going to show you this, like as far as the memory goes, your spinning spool, like look how small that is,
Okay.
and then look how large that is.
Oh,
So as far
so
as
when you
memory
put the
goes,
spinner up the inline,
yeah,
there's a big difference in diameter.
it's very small on the ice fishing front.
Yeah.
So I think they don't want that memory. But the memory I don't think plays as big of a role because again you're not casting it.
Ah,
The
right.
memory I think is a lot of problems when you're casting and you're trying to open the spool and it's just going crazy and stuff. But
Okay. That
especially
makes a
on
lot of
these
sense.
inlines now, like that's another
The
reason why I
inlines
have
with that
that.
free fall trigger that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So the inline is just kind of free falling off of it straight off.
Straight
So you
off.
don't
Yeah.
have that issue.
Yep.
Memory can cause a problem when you have a reel like this because it'll, like when you open the bail, it'll just start like unraveling itself. That's
Yeah.
another reason why I have this nano fill, because this nano fill, it's made by Berkeley. It has like almost zero memory.
Oh, okay.
And because I don't change my line constantly, it
Yeah.
is,
Especially on ice fishing.
yeah, yeah.
You don't get out
The,
that often. Like,
yeah,
it's just the
that's,
facts.
yep. That's why I just
Okay.
wanted something more, shit, whoops. The
Hope
fucking
everything's
noodle,
okay.
dude. It's fine, but it's so funny how like loose that noodle is. Like I dropped it and it's like spun the wrong way. Like I was like, is it broke? And I'm like, oh no, it's just that fucking flimsy. It just does
Just
weird shit.
being a noodle. And
Just over here
and
living
something
up
we
to
already
its
talked about,
name.
speaking of noodle with the high vis tip and stuff like that. There's high
Yeah.
vis line.
Oh yeah, yeah. High vis line. Yep.
Again, why not? You're
It's
drilling
kind of,
down a
yeah,
dark hole. Like
yeah.
the whole
It's
lake is frozen over. It's hard to get sun into.
right.
Look down an ice hole.
Yeah.
It's dark,
Yep. Yep.
but
Exactly.
you want to see it moving.
Yeah, and it's a lot like the high vis tip.
Yeah,
Like you just want to see everything moving. Like the more,
sure.
like if you're really having a tough time and you want to make sure that you're seeing the, like basically the bite indicator, that you're able to see it,
Yep.
then the
Yep.
high vis line makes a big deal. And like, but
Right.
when you're using the high vis line, unless you're fishing in really stained water, you just kind of put a swivel on like I did this other one, and then you put clear line on for like the bottom 2 feet or whatever. So then
Oh,
it's not that big of a deal. So that's what I got on
right.
this one. Like
Okay.
braided line, like if you want a lower diameter, that makes sense. But the braided line, I wouldn't suggest ever just going like braided line to the hook unless you're working in like really stained water where the fish can't see the line that well anyways.
Right. Right.
But when you're talking about ice stuff, yeah, like you said, there's different formulas. And if you're wondering like which one do I get, it's super easy to tell because they all say ice some sort. Here's a
Oh,
suffix,
yeah.
ice
You got some
magic.
suffix. Yeah.
Yeah, so that one's just a monofilament. Uh Here is
So there's still
suffix
like the language
fluorocarbon.
is
This
still the
is
same, right? Like
invisible
because
ice.
everything you're saying sounds familiar to me with the filaments, the monofilaments, this
Oh
uh
yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
all the same language, but like it says ice on it because you have to remember too, ice is sharp. Like
Yeah, that's the other thing I was
it's
gonna,
abrasive, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Go
that's
ahead.
the other thing I was gonna get at was the abrasive resistanceness.
Hmm.
I don't think I said that word right.
Close enough.
Abrasive resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a resistanceness is probably not a word.
Sound good to me.
But yeah, that's a big part of it. Like fluorocarbon is already like a bit more like abrasive resistant, but that's exactly kind of what it comes down to, is that they're trying to make sure that it's not getting cut on the ice.
Yeah.
And this one says like repels water, fast sinking. So
Oh,
fast sinking, I mean, when it's a fluorocarbon is cool.
okay.
But it literally on the back says hydrophobic because it hates water. And then water repellent. So it says reduces line freezing, because you'll get ice buildup on your line when you're
Right.
like jigging and stuff, which is an issue when you start reeling it into your reel. Like it just,
Right.
there's just problems that can cause when you have the ice buildup.
Yeah.
So that's why you want that.
Yeah.
And then it says just like superior strength, abrasive resistance, and sensitivity, low stress or low stretch index for optimal hook set power, sinks 4 times faster than monofilament, which is just fluorocarbon just sinks.
In general.
So like,
Yep.
I read all that stuff to let you know that like, if you're thinking like, if you're a summertime fisherman and you don't know what you're looking for, the back of the box tells you a lot of what you need to know if there's something specific you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for and you're going ice fishing, just rule of thumb, get a box that says ice on it. Because they all, for the most part,
because they're all going to have that extra stuff that you need in this weather to, like, it's built for it. I mean, that's all there is to it.
I mean, they literally said, like, here's another one that I have where it's like Suffolk, it says advance. And it might be harder to see on this one, but if you look, this small spot says ice monofilament. Like, they're literally formulated a little bit different to be able to handle the cold water better.
Yeah.
So knowing,
like, it's not just marketing. It is,
right.
It's like it's a real thing. They put in research and
yeah. So knowing like what you're looking for isn't necessarily super important. Just make sure you're getting the right stuff. You can get away with using line from the summer, but these lines are designed to do all the things
to give you less hassle.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Which is basically why you're buying any different kind of line.
Right.
You could go out there and fish with a shoelace, probably, but there's so many different kinds of. I mean, just go to like any bait shop, your Fleet Farms, your Shields, your Cabela's, Bass Pro Shop, same shit. Like, just go to any of them and look at where the fishing line is,
right,
and see that it is a full row, because each one of those has their own purpose, and the reason is to give you slightly less hassle or slightly better performance in one area.
Right. Yep.
So they'll all work, but if you're just getting started, just
find one that says ice.
get the one that says ice, and maybe ask the person there, because they're normally pretty helpful.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Let's jump over to the random take, where we are going to get into some video game shit. Again, I need a little video game unwind, and we're specifically really going to touch on some stuff that's right in Tim's lane. So we're going to do that. Hit the random take. I guess I should have said hit the break.